today I have the pleasure of talking with 𝗘হি𝗴𝗶𝘀𝗵, who is an ESL teacher and researcher based in Turkey. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Could you please just start by telling us a bit about yourself?
Of course, sure. Thank you for the nice intro, by the way. I'm 𝗘হি𝗴𝗶𝘀𝗵, and I live in Antalya, Turkey. And I've been working as a teacher. Actually, it's EFL teacher because we don't teach English as a second language in Turkey. It's a foreign language for us. So I would prefer to say that I am EFL teacher, so rather than ESL. And so I've been working as a teacher for 10 years. And I am also struggling to finish my thesis on growth mindset, actually.
What prompted you to start a master's degree?
Actually, that's a long story. Okay. Normally, I started my master's in 2011. When I finished my bachelor's degree. I just completed my degree and I immediately started a master's because I was going to be an instructor at a university. But things didn't go the way I wanted to go. So then I just thought to myself, okay, I can just do my master's and I can be a better teacher and I can do my best to, develop my skills, and it will be a professional development.
So your thesis is on growth mindset?
Yeah. Normally it was something else. I mean, my proposal was something else. But I just quit that proposal because it was going to be a PhD dissertation or something like that, because my topic was too wide and it was all about the problems that EFL teachers encounter, and it was going to be a comparative study because I was going to work with Turkish teachers, Turkish EFL teachers, and also EFL teachers from Poland. And then I couldn't reach all of those teachers in Poland. That's why I couldn't finish. So now I am working with the EFL teachers in my district only. So, and I'm searching if they're having a growth mindset for their profession or if their mindset is fixed. So I'm just trying to figure that out. And also I am trying to figure out their self perceptions concerning their profession, because for teachers working in secondary level or secondary, how do we say, or high school, let's say middle school or high school, they are just their self-esteem and self-perception regarding their profession is always higher. But EFL teachers who work in primary level, they're just like, okay, I guess we are having a burnout and we're not so good. It's because of the primary school, so we don't know what to do after 10 years in primary. So their self-esteem is always like low. So I think I'm gonna just prefer finding out if there's a correlation between their self-esteem level and mindsets.
It does sound like a huge amount of work, actually, from the way you've described it, and very, very detailed. One of the things that I've noticed in the news recently, when you talk about self-esteem and self-perception, that there has been a long-running controversy over the way we describe and recruit EFL teachers. So in my line of work, we do still use the term native and non-native speakers because that's something that a lot of people understand, or at least think they understand, rather than something like L1 or L2 speakers. Do you think there's a difference in self-esteem amongst non-native EFL teachers compared with native EFL teachers?
Sure. Of course. For example, okay, I can take that issue with my perspective and I can express my feelings, of course, about that. I would say non-native teachers are doing a lot of job, and they're doing hard work, and their dedication is just awesome. I could say that. But self-esteem is a kind of issue that I would say which is really, really tricky and challenging, because it's all about, you know, your speaking skills, not about grammar, vocabulary, reading or writing or other skills. It's all about speaking. It's about whether you're just able to speak the language or not. So it's just it really depends on your skill and how good you are, and it affects your self-esteem. And for native speakers, it's nothing. And it goes the same for us. For example, I teach Turkish as a foreign language. And when I teach Turkish, of course, my self-esteem is like over the clouds. But when I teach English, it's a bit, I don't know, maybe for me, it's not that, how could I say, that bad. But I know that many of my friends have that struggle and challenge in their profession because they're non-native speakers of English.
The question that always interests me with that is why? Because non-native speakers, if I can just stick with that term, I know it's controversial, but non-native speakers of English are vastly in the majority of all English speakers globally.
Mm-hmm.
And yet native English speakers, I think, often see themselves as better at English, or at least don't question their ability in English. And a lot of non-native speakers assume that native English speakers are actually somehow inherently better. But is that actually really the case? Are native English speakers actually better communicators just because they were born into this language?
I don't know. I wouldn't say it, but I could just share my own experiences actually, because I worked in the UK in London, and I was a trainee there, and I had that, you know, I have a lot of memories. I just think all about them in my mind while I speak. So I just look through my own experiences while you were saying the question and you were asking the question. I think um, non-native speakers are just good and well enough all the time, but I think native speakers should be educated, first of all, and I wouldn't just hire or recruit an English or British person to teach English. And they should be educated, and they should have the potential and also high qualifications. But I don't know, it's about personality, it's about your character, and it's about how you perceive your profession. And there are too many factors in that. So that's why I am just struggling to give the best answer to you right now, because non-native speakers of English and non-native teachers are really doing their best. That's all I know. I know that. But I wouldn't say just because they were born in Britain or just because they were born in USA, they are the best or they should be the best. I wouldn't say that. But I think if you just take your profession too seriously, that would be nice to see the results. I mean, it doesn't depend whether you're a non-native or native speaker. It's about how you perceive your profession and how dedicated you are for your profession. It's all about your personality, and it's all about your professionalism. It's not about being a non-native speaker or native speaker, I guess. I would just say that.
And you talk about your personality and your dedication to your profession. I noticed one of your accolades on LinkedIn was that you were voted the most inspiring teacher in Turkey in 2022. Am I misquoting that? I thought I saw that there, and I thought I've got to ask
Yeah,
you
yeah,
about that
yeah,
because
yeah, you're right.
that is something to celebrate.
Thank you. You are absolutely right, absolutely right. Yeah, that was quite surprising because every year they have another topic. Like, for example, in 2021, they had the best teacher and most inspiring teacher in, I think, I don't remember, but material development or activities or something like that. So it was the subtopic of the award. And my year, it was all about professional development, inspiring teacher. But for example, you are inspiring in terms of what? Are you just doing your job so perfect, or are you joining professional development opportunities? Are you chasing them? Are you chasing like PD chances and opportunities all the time? Are you giving seminars, or are you just running webinars, or are you developing some kind of, I don't know, content for students and also your colleagues? So it was all about that. And there was a nomination process. And I was quite surprised all about that because even the parents of my students nominated me, and I was like shocked because I didn't expect that. And the nomination process was, of course, done secretly. But then afterwards, the parents and also my students just called me and texted me and wrote me emails like, okay, I nominated you for this and that. And I was so excited and I was super happy when I saw their messages and when they called me. And it was quite good, actually. But I just still can't believe that I was awarded. Of course, I just take my profession so seriously, and I do my best. I'm trying to do my best for students, and I just do crazy activities all the time. And yeah, but it was quite surprising, and I was, of course, proud when I saw the award was given to me.
Well, that's great. I mean, and you're sorry, I'm still throat. I said that's great, and your enthusiasm for your profession really does come across. What was it that prompted you to become a teacher in the first place? Was it a lifelong ambition, or was there a sudden moment when you thought that's definitely what I want to do?
It was okay. So I have a funny story. And I always share that with my students. Actually, it started when I was a teenager. I was just a kid, maybe not a teenager even. So I was 11 years old when I saw that film, the movie Harry Potter. So I was at, I guess, fourth grade or fifth grade or something like that. So, and the first movie I've ever watched was Lion King. And then after Lion King, I just found myself in Harry Potter. And at that time, I was so into that movie, and I just started to research. And we had no internet, no laptops. We had just computers and, internet cafes and also books, of course. So I just thought to myself, okay, I want to go to the UK and I want to meet those people. And yeah, that was the biggest thing that prompted me to be an English teacher. Actually, I was just thinking that I would be a surgeon or I would be an astronaut or something like that. But as you age, as you get older, you just realize that, okay, you're good at something and you're bad at something, and your weak points and your strong points, and it's like a SWOT analysis. So after that, you just decide that, okay, my strongest point is that, okay, I can be a teacher, or I can be something else, or I can be a doctor, I can be a lawyer, I can be anything else. So then I just thought to myself, okay, it was all about Scotland and also the UK and London. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to be an English teacher. And one day I'm going to go to the UK and I'm going to live in London and I'm going to work in London, and it's going to be brilliant. And I'm going to meet those people. I mean, who's the people staring in the movie, like Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson and so on and so forth. And I did that. before I was just a teacher. Before I was appointed as a teacher, I did that because I was in London for 4 months. I was working at a museum, and then I just met them. And it was like, hi back, but it was enough for me. So that's the funny story, actually.
No, that's brilliant. It was the Harry Potter magic that inspired you to go into teaching. I love that. When I was at
Yeah, yeah.
university up in Durham, that was actually one of the places that they filmed some of the Harry Potter films. How do your students see English in terms of who owns it? It's a big question, and a lot of people would say you shouldn't even be asking about language ownership because some people say nobody does own a language. But what would your students say about that? Who does English belong to, if anyone?
Uh, it's a tricky question. Um, Normally, I guess I would say that my students now would say that English is international and no nation owns it, because they know that English is a must for them. And not for the professional purposes, but in their daily lives, of course, because I live in Antalya, and Antalya is the very, how would I say, it's like worldwide known touristic place. So that's why they just know that, okay, English and the second languages just like Russian and Ukrainian. So they're very, very well aware of the importance of the language. And they just say, okay, if I can see anyone walking around and doesn't know anything, like he or she would be tourist or anybody else, it doesn't really matter. So if they are there, so they just go, or they just approach that person and ask, do you speak English? No other languages. So it's not like Arabic, it's not like, any other languages, it's not like Spanish. But I think it's typical in Turkey. It's typical in Turkey because we just have English. And we often communicate with tourists and all the other residents or refugees or immigrants or migrants. We just communicate in English. So English is like international right now. We don't even question, okay, is that really specifically, how do we say, for example, Americans own English or British ones own English. We don't even question that. English is like, okay, if you do know English, that's right. Okay, we don't know anything else, or we don't need any other languages. So we just perceive the subject like this, I think.
It does bring
I
up
mean,
a
my
very interesting
students.
question, because if English is an international language, which of course it is, then the form that it might be spoken in the UK or in America is not necessarily the standard. It's one form, it's one standard, but it's not necessarily one that is or should be applied universally or globally.
Normally, actually, we just have that standard and formal and legal standard, and this is all about the UK normally, and it's not about the USA. But of course, for state schools, it depends on the English teacher. If that English teacher prefers to speak in a way which which British people speak, like British accent. So the students immediately learn that accent. But it's all about the teacher. For example, for me, I don't think that I just own a British accent. It's like more like American. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. But it's about the teacher himself or herself. Because if your teacher promotes that accent, you just immediately grab that accent. But if not, you just speak like Tinglish, we say. Turkish English is like a Tinglish accent. So, for example, of course, we have the standard. Of course, we are well aware of the IPA. And in the past, I had some students who were interested in learning IPA. And I was quite surprised when I first met the IPA, and I was quite interested. And all the time, I'm just teaching my students that, okay, the pronunciation is something like that, and the accent is like that, and the word choice is like that. And to some age, to certain age, they're not well aware of this accent thing or IPA or the fact that there is a standard. But when they go to the university, when they are mature enough, they just say that, ah, yeah, I just saw that in the high school, or I just saw that in middle school. Oh, now I realize that. So it's about their knowledge of English, and also it really depends on their speaking level and also level of English, basically. So yeah.
And I guess, sorry, I really have got a dry throat. And I guess from what you were saying, obviously in Turkey, people are communicating predominantly internationally, as opposed to purely with people from the UK or purely with people from the USA. So yes, there are standards and differences, but they're not necessarily something applicable always at any one time. And you're saying it could be adapted initially depending on the teacher's style and preferences. I was very interested when you mentioned Tinglish.
Yeah.
Turkish English.
Yes.
And you were talking about word choice and form. Can you think of any examples that you can share with us of a particular variety of English or words and phrases that exist in Tinglish, Turkish English, that I probably wouldn't know from British English?
Let me think. So it's about, I think it's about the more about pronunciation rather than word choice, maybe. And so I was thinking of saying an example when I was mentioning word choice. It's like, for example, freedom and liberty. So even the English teachers are not aware of the difference. So I was thinking about that on my mind. And so for Tinglish, I would say it's more related to pronunciation, because normally, for example, hello, we just say, and we try to resemble the British accent while saying it, like hello. But normally Turkish people say hello. It's all about the pronunciation, because of, I think how we would say that, I'm not quite sure, but it's about throw think, I guess. It's about how you pronounce your own language, how you pronounce the words in your native language. So for example, we just have that kind of thing in cake, for example. So Turkish is like read as it's written. So my students would have that tendency to read that like as 𝗂𝗂, because it's written like 𝗂𝗂. So of course, I just had that experience with my second graders and third graders. So then I was always, saying that, okay, it's not 𝗂𝗂, it's cake. But of course I was failing. Then I just did an activity, and I just make them correct their pronunciation. But that was, that's a long story. And also I could say internet, for example, and also I could say Wi-Fi, because we have Wi-Fi, and we just say, okay, if there is any Wi-Fi around here, because it's written as Wi-Fi, not even, with W, but we just say Wi-Fi or internet in English.
And yeah, that's great. And of course, I guess one of the big problems with English is it's not a phonetic language anyway. So it's very hard to know how the words are pronounced just by reading them. Do you think how difficult is English? I mean, clearly you're an English teacher, so, and with extremely high level of fluency, obviously. But for people generally, is it a hard language to learn?
I guess not as hard as Japanese or Chinese or Russian or German, because I know my own experience with German and also Russian. So I was quite feeling myself so depressed and blue because I think German is so hard for me. I would say German is hard because there are so many like long, really, really long sentences or words. We just have Latin alphabet, and English has Latin alphabet. And the only thing is that to translate the whole sentence, I think that's the hardest part. And also for some, I think for some words, like I just would say, I would just suggest again pronunciation, but it's not that hard for Turkish people.
What about listening skills? Because you were saying in
Oh,
English that the instinct is to pronounce things differently. And you're also saying English is an international language. Does it make it easier or harder? Because if it's an international language, presumably you have to develop the ability to comprehend a huge range of accents.
yes. Yes, indeed. Yes. So, yeah. So for general learners of English, it's quite hard to comprehend and also to catch the words while listening some British people. For example, I don't know, it's easier maybe when you listen to an Indian person speaking English or Italian person speaking English because you know the accent. But when it comes to the British people or when it comes to Australian people, it's even harder because they just tend to speak and tend to say the words like longer. The tone is always the longer. So, and also I can, of course, again, share my own experience. For example, it sometimes, I mean, listening is the whole thing. If you just listen and don't understand anything, it's just kaputt in German. It's broken. It's nonsense for you. It doesn't mean anything to you if you listen and don't understand anything. So sometimes it's all about the speed. For normally British people are, I don't know, are just keen on speaking slower, in a slower mood, so that you can understand, okay, what's going on now? Okay, now I get that word. I get that word too. Oh, okay, I understand the sentence. So, but for I guess I'm afraid for American people, it's always the hardest part because they tend to speak so fast, and they tend to speak that like chop some of the endings of the words. And also I think it's all about the word choice again. For example, I always share this story with my students when I was in the UK, and I was responsible for many things at the museum. And someday my curator came to me and wanted to do something, but I didn't understand anything. And she was just talking so slow for me, and I was quite feeling myself like stupid because I didn't understand anything at all, because she said, can you bring the Hoover? And I was just, everything was running on my head. What is Hoover? What is Hoover? Okay, I understood, so many words in the sentence, but not Hoover. Then I just realized that Hoover was the trademark of the vacuum cleaner. So how would I know? So it's always hard for Turkish people to understand American accent, not British one, but for British accent, it's always hard for that kind of word choices. So if you don't know the concept, or if you don't know the concept, you just feel yourself like fool. And yeah, but it's always nice to have different accents. For example, I can understand French accents, I can understand Chinese accents, and it's always nice to see that non-native speakers are quite understandable and easier and simpler all the time.
It was quite interesting to me when you said that it's he says, often easier to understand English spoken with an Indian accent or with an Italian accent than it can be for sometimes British, but particularly American. Indian, I might have predicted, but I hadn't thought of Italian as being a particularly easy form of English to understand. And I think
Yes,
a lot of people
because
in Britain would be surprised at that. It's interesting what you said.
actually, it's because of the, I don't know. Of course, I'm not the expert on that. It's just my personal view. So I would say I had Indian friends, I had Spanish friends, and Italian friends. So they have, their body language. They just have their body language used everywhere, especially Italians and Spanish. And also, I think it's about their how would I say? I'm just thinking. It's just because they can stress some of the words so that we can understand. For example, R. R is the most stressed letter in Turkish, and in Indian as well, and also in Pakistani as well, and Italian and Spanish as well. It's just all about that, I guess. And also, they don't speak so fast, especially Italians. It's just all about that, I guess. It's easier. And also Indians, normally British people find it so hard. I know it's because of the accent, and then just they have their own special way of pronouncing the words. But to me, it's always simpler to figure out what's going on in the speech and grab some words.
We've talked about teaching English and learning English and what it's like and how people perceive that. As a teacher of English, what tips or advice would you give to native English speakers to help communicate better? You've mentioned rate of speech and slowing down a few times. Is there anything else that you think is absolutely key to enabling native English speakers to communicate more effectively?
I would say, okay, slowing down is the best and perfect thing. I just would choose that for the, I would put it on the first on the list, probably, just speaking slow all the time. And also, I would suggest for native speakers of English to mind their own word choice. Because, for example, I again will talk about a memory of mine. I had my trip to London, and it was my first day there, and I had that Oyster card. And normally I didn't have any idea what that card was all about. And then my friend told me that, okay, you just put some pounds on this card, and then you just trip and you just travel with buses and so on and so forth. And I found myself at a market, like a very small market. How do we say in English? I don't know, but it's kiosk in German. So I just like slowly approached, and then I just gave my card, and I just said, okay, could you put £5 on this card? I said to the guy who was responsible for the market, and he was looking at me so I don't know how I would say, it's just in vain, like a ghost, and like no one was speaking, and he didn't understand anything. And I was just saying, okay, £5 on this card, could you put, please? And I was just trying to be kind because I was in London, and I know that British people are so kind and so polite. And I was just using, could you put? But it didn't work. I failed. And then he said, now I get it. You mean £5 top up? And I didn't know anything about what top up means. So word choice is really, really important for non-native speakers, because we are not the experts in that concept, and or also in that context. So we don't know what that word functions for. So that's the most tricky part, I guess. So word choice is like, maybe the word choice should always be the simple one. So I think it's all about the communication, and it's all about to be understood and to to deliver the message. And so I always tell to my students, okay, don't be too Turkish, don't be perfectionist, don't show that, okay, you are the star, you are bright, you are everything. You don't need to show that for speaking English, or you don't need to show it while speaking English, because it's all about the communication.
I
And
particularly like.
just try to choose. Sorry?
No, please go on.
Okay. So I just always, suggest them to be so simple. And I think, I mean, as I said before, it's all about the communication. It's not about how well educated you are. It's not about showing how good you are. It's not about, how would I say, how well you are, like, I don't know, you're not a philosopher, you're not, you're not the shiny star in the classroom or anything else, or you don't need to be so perfect, you don't need to be so super to show everything you've got. And then, for example, for Turkish people, if we try to do everything in one space and in one time, we fail. It's all about, maybe I would say this is more about cultural cultural aspects. But I would just say, and I would maybe beg for native speakers to to choose simple words, just in order to be understood.
I think your point about communication without connection is nothing. That just feels so important. It really does. I think that's a good place to stop the recording. Is there anything else you wanted to ask or say or share?
Not really. I just wanted to thank you. And that was a super evening for you and for me. And yeah, I would just say that I am so proud, and also I'm so I'm feeling myself so nice right now, and also I'm so grateful to you for your invitation and for this wonderful conversation. So thank you.
No, I'm so pleased you're able to make time to talk today. I've really enjoyed it. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and thank you very much indeed.